A 10-year-old girl with a dirty face and a chopped-up haircut walks into a cage full of criminals and somehow catches the eye of the most dangerous assassin alive. That is not a coincidence. That is a recruitment. Welcome back. Today we are going deep into one of the most layered, underappreciated storylines in A Song of Ice and Fire. The moment Jaqen H'ghar decided that Arya Stark was exactly what the Faceless Men had been waiting for. Not just any recruit, the recruit. We are going to break down every clue Jaqen picked up on, dismantle the so-called 3 deaths for 3 lives deal, and by the end of this video, you will understand that Arya walking through the doors of the House of Black and White was not an accident. It was the result of a very deliberate, very calculated effort by one of the most skilled assassins to ever exist in this fictional world. Let us get into it. Here is something most people gloss over when they think about this story. Jaqen H'ghar was already in that cage before Arya was ever in the picture. He was locked up heading north with a convoy of Night's Watch recruits, and Arya only ended up in that convoy because Jaqen, the Night's Watch ranger, spotted her, cut her hair, and stuffed her in with the group to get her out of King's Landing. So the standard version of events, the idea that Jaqen was on some secret mission to find Arya, that does not hold up. He was not looking for her, she just happened to show up. But here is where it gets interesting. Once she showed up, Jaqen stayed. He stuck with the group well past the point where a faceless man with no further obligations would have just disappeared. He lingered, he watched, and eventually he came back for her at Harrenhal. That shift from passive observer to active recruiter is exactly what we need to understand. So what did he see in that window of time that convinced him Arya Stark was worth his personal attention? Let us talk about Arya's disguise for a second, because this is actually a key part of the story. She cut her hair, she smeared her face with dirt. She told people her name was Arya and that she was an orphan boy from Flea Bottom. That is the entire disguise. Now for most people in that convoy, that was enough. They were soldiers, orphans, criminals. They were not trained to notice things, so Arya's cover held fine. But Jaqen H'ghar is not most people. This is a man who has spent his life changing faces, adopting identities, seeing through the masks that other people wear. Reading people is not just a skill for him, it is the foundation of his entire profession. The Faceless Men are, at their core, masters of identity. They become other people for a living. And the flip side of that is that they can see through other people's attempts to do the same thing. So when Jaqen looked at Arya, really looked, he would have seen through her disguise almost instantly. And once he started paying attention, the clues just kept coming. Here is a list of things Arya does during the journey from King's Landing that would have immediately flagged her as someone far more significant than an orphan boy. First, the sword she carries, Needle, which is a finely crafted blade, not a rough street weapon, not a stolen dagger, a real sword made with skill. No Flea Bottom orphan has that. Second, the fighting stance. At one point she gets into a physical confrontation with another boy in the convoy and she instinctively drops into a water dancer stance, the Bravosi style that Syrio Forel had been teaching her. That is an extremely specific, extremely recognizable fighting form, and it is not something you pick up in the streets. It takes years of training with someone who knows what they are doing. Third, the bathroom situation. She never uses the latrine at the same time as the other boys because she is hiding the fact that she is a girl. Small detail, but noticeable if you are looking. Fourth, she gets different treatment from Jaqen. He checks in on her, protects her slightly more than the others. That kind of special treatment stands out to anyone paying attention. Fifth, when the gold cloaks show up looking for a fugitive from King's Landing, Arya hides. She does not stay calm. She panics and disappears. That is a very specific reaction. And sixth, the battle cry. When the convoy gets attacked, Arya shouts Winterfell, not some street slogan, not a common phrase. Winterfell, the seat of House Stark, the home of the most prominent noble family in the north. Put all of that together and you are not looking at an orphan boy anymore. You are looking at a highborn girl, trained in an elite fighting style, armed with a noble sword connected to House Stark, and on the run from King's Landing right around the time Ned Stark lost his head. Jaqen would have had all of this figured out within a couple of weeks, probably less. So Jaqen knows who she is. He knows she is Arya Stark. And then Arya frees him from the cage during the attack on the convoy, and after that, he comes back to her at Harrenhal with an offer. The offer goes like this. He says the Red God demands 3 deaths in exchange for the 3 lives she saved when she freed him and the 2 other prisoners from that burning wagon. He says she must name 3 people to die. Now this sounds like some kind of mystical law of balance. Death for life, that kind of thing. And on the surface, it does track with things we hear elsewhere in this world. Miri Maz-Dur says something similar to Daenerys, only death can pay for life. It is a principle that shows up repeatedly, and Martin clearly built it into the magic system. But here is the thing, look at how Jaqen actually behaves. He puts up a performance of reluctance when she names a third person. He acts like it is a burden, but he does it. And then, crucially, he does not follow up by telling her she must now save 3 lives to restore the balance. He does not enforce any ongoing cosmic ledger. He gives her the coin, teaches her the words, and leaves. If this were genuinely about maintaining some balance between life and death, the story would not just drop the thread there. The 3 deaths were not about balance, they were a test. Jaqen came back to Arya to see whether she had what it takes to be a faceless man. Could she look a person in the eyes, or not even that, just say a name and send them to their death without flinching? Could she do it not once but multiple times? Could she stomach what he does for a living? And she could. She named Kiswick, she named Weiss, she named a third person without hesitation. She passed every single checkpoint he put in front of her. Now we need to talk about what the Faceless Men actually need from recruits, because this is where the analysis gets really sharp. The Faceless Men are not a conventional army. They do not conscript soldiers. They do not grow through conquest. They are a highly selective guild of religious assassins, and they have been around since before the doom of Valyria, that is centuries of institutional history. They started in the slave mines under the 14 Flames, where the first of their order heard the prayers of desperate slaves and gave them the gift of death. They do not advertise, they do not convert. Their philosophy is essentially that death is present in every religion on earth under different names: the stranger in the faith of the Seven, the black goat in Qohor, the lion of night in Yeti. They believe they serve a god that everyone is already worshipping, whether they know it or not. Because of all of this, they have to recruit carefully and proactively, and what they need is very specific. They need someone who can disappear into a crowd, someone who can be anyone, someone psychologically capable of killing without personal hatred or rage driving it, because that kind of killing is actually forbidden in their order. They cannot kill for personal reasons. They cannot choose their own targets. They serve the god, not their own grudges. Now look at Arya through that lens. She is clever, she reads situations fast. She has been surviving on her own in hostile territory since she was 9 years old. She has been living multiple identities without even being trained to do it. She was Arya Stark, then Arya the orphan boy, then Arya in the convoy, then Weasel at Harrenhal. She is essentially doing what faceless men do, becoming someone else entirely, and she is doing it naturally, without formal instruction. She has a strong, intuitive relationship with disguise and anonymity. She is physically capable. Sirio Forel trained her. She can handle herself. She is at an age where her identity is still being formed. She is malleable, impressionable. The faceless men can work with that. And nobody is looking for her. The whole world thinks Arya Stark is either dead or missing. If she just walks into Bravos and disappears into the House of Black and White, no one is coming to find her. No family member is going to knock on that door and demand she come home. She is, from a purely logistical standpoint, the cleanest possible recruit. No loose ends. Here is the detail that I think seals this whole analysis, and it is one that does not get talked about nearly enough. In the books, Jaqen comes back to Arya at Harrenhal right at the moment she is reciting her list. You know the list, the kill list, except she does not call it a kill list. She calls it a prayer. She recites the names of her enemies before she sleeps: Cersei, Joffrey, the Hound, various others, and she ends it with the words Valor Morgulize. Now stop and think about what that sounds like to a priest of the many-faced god. The entire founding mythology of the Faceless Men is built on this exact scenario. The first faceless man heard the prayers of desperate slaves and answered them. A slave prayed fervently for the death of a cruel master, and the first faceless man granted that prayer in exchange for lifelong service. That is the origin of the whole order: prayer to a god of death. Answer comes in the form of an assassin. Service follows. And here is Arya Stark, a child who has lost everything: her father executed unjustly, her family scattered, her direwolf sent away, her home hundreds of miles gone, lying in the dark, reciting the names of her enemies and ending with Valor Morgulize. All men must die. To Jaqen H'ghar, a devoted servant of the many-faced god, that is not a quirky habit. That is a desperate prayer, and it is being addressed to his god. He heard it, the way the first of his order heard prayers in the mines. And what does he do? He appears immediately after. He offers to help her with those names. He even offers to kill a king. Joffrey is on her list if she asks. He is answering her prayer, exactly as the origin story of his order commands. There is one more layer to this that adds something interesting, even if it is more speculative. Arya is a warg. She does not know it yet. She has not been trained. but she has been having wolf dreams since she lost Nymeria. She connects to her direwolf across a massive distance, something that even trained skinchangers would find difficult. And later in Bravos, while blinded, she starts seeing through the eyes of a cat she befriends. This is genuinely extraordinary ability. GRRM himself has confirmed that all the Stark children have skinchanger potential to varying degrees, but Arya is doing something that even Bran, with a Greenseer teacher, took time to develop. She is doing it unconsciously across an ocean without any guidance. Now the question is whether Jaqen could have detected any of this during the journey. We do not know for certain. There is no moment in the text where Jaqen explicitly identifies her as a skinchanger. But the Faceless Men are incredibly perceptive observers of people, and some theories suggest that an experienced reader of human nature might notice something unusual about the quality of her awareness, her instincts, her connection to things around her. If Jaqen had any inkling that she carried skinchanger abilities on top of everything else, that would have made her even more extraordinary in his eyes. A person who can wear other identities and slip into other minds is something genuinely rare. The ability to become someone else goes even deeper than a disguise. It goes all the way to perspective, to inhabiting another consciousness. Whether or not Jaqen knew about the warging, Arya carries it, and it is going to matter in whatever comes next from George R.R. Martin. After Arya names her 3 people, after she passes the test, Jaqen gives her the coin and teaches her the words. Valor Morgulais, say this to any man of Bravos with this coin and doors will open. He is not handing her a gift, he is extending a standing offer, an open door. He is saying, when you are ready to become no one, come find us in Bravos. He even tries to sweeten the deal by showing her what he can do. He shifts his face in front of her, rearranging his features into someone else entirely. He is giving her a preview of what she could learn. And then she says she has to go home to Winterfell first. And Jaqen accepts that. He does not push. He does not try to manipulate her into coming immediately. A good recruiter knows when to let someone come to a decision on their own. He planted the seed. He opened the door. He trusts that the seed will grow. When Arya does eventually make it to Bravos and shows up at the House of Black and White with that coin, the kindly man who greets her sees the coin and recognizes immediately that she has been sent by one of their own. She arrives with an invisible letter of recommendation from a faceless man who vouched for her before she ever crossed the narrow sea. That is how deliberate this all was. Let us put the whole portrait together. Arya Stark at the time of Jaqen's assessment, roughly 10 years old, clever and perceptive beyond her years, trained in a fighting style that requires discipline and body control, naturally skilled at adopting different identities without formal training, psychologically willing to order deaths without personal animosity clouding her judgment. She names people on that list not in a rage but with a cold, deliberate certainty. She carries suppressed warg abilities that make her relationship with perception and identity even stranger and deeper than it appears. She has lost everything that would have given her a fixed sense of self. She is unmoored, grieving, and hungry for purpose. And she is, for all intents and purposes, invisible to the world. No one knows where she is or whether she is alive. The Faceless Men have been operating for centuries. They have seen a lot of recruits. But the combination of raw talent, psychological profile, magical ability, and clean circumstances that Arya represents is probably not something they come across every decade. Jaqen did not recruit her because she was convenient. He recruited her because, from where he was standing, she was the most promising candidate he had ever seen. And the story that follows her years in Bravos, the training, the tests, the eventual confrontation with the kindly man and the waif, the question of whether Arya Stark ever truly ceases to exist, all of that is downstream from this one moment on a dusty road when a man in a cage looked at a girl with a bad haircut and thought, that one. That is the full breakdown. Jaqen H'ghar is not a character who stumbled into a recruitment opportunity. He is a patient, calculating professional who identified the perfect candidate and executed a methodical approach to bring her into the fold. The 3 deaths were a test, the coin was an offer, the face change was a sales pitch. And Arya, despite everything, said yes, just not yet. In a future video, we are going to look at what happens once she actually arrives at the House of Black and White, the training, the philosophy of becoming no one, and whether the Faceless Men have a larger agenda beyond just making Arya into one of them. Because there are some interesting theories floating around about whether the organization has some longer game in play. If you want to see that, make sure you are subscribed. And drop a comment below. What do you think? Was Jaqen's recruitment of Arya the most calculated moment in the entire series? Or is there something even more deliberate going on that we have not cracked yet? I want to hear your take. See you in the next one.